Chapter 1. Water is filling my ears.
Useless beast! I should cut tail! Drowning's too good! You!
Egyptians revere cats, but there are exceptions. A week ago, the brute snatched me from the streets, put me in a sack, and brought me on board to protect the load of grain he's taking down the Nile to Wasset. Cats hunt rats, but there are exceptions. Which the brute realized this morning. He picked me up by the scruff of my neck and threw me over the side. If I never see a boat again, it will be too soon. I swim toward the riverbank. Exhausted, I lie on the shore and let my fur dry in the warmth of the sun. Now that I'm free, I intend to resume roaming from village to village, seeing new things, meeting new cats, tasting new foods. But first I'll eat the perch I caught during my swim. I'm licking the smell of fish off my paws and face when I spot a pyramid in the far distance. I've heard a lot about them, but I've never seen one before. I can't take my eyes off it. It seems to be beckoning me. It's my destiny to go there. Tail on high and a heart full of expectation, I begin walking. Hours later, tail dragging behind me and a heart full of despair, I'm in a deep, desolate valley staring up at a pyramid-shaped mountaintop. All around me are high stone cliffs, rocky slopes, and, set into the cliff bottoms, portals with double wooden doors. The handles are tightly roped together, and the knot is covered with wax and clay seals. Of course, the pyramid-shaped mountaintop is the sacred peak. This valley is Task-e-Qamāt. It's a cemetery for pharaohs. Each portal is an entrance to a tomb with corridors leading to a chamber, where the pharaoh's mummy is buried with his treasure. I learned about Task-e-Qamāt at the temple where the priests had taken me in. Like the brute, they mistakenly assumed all cats were ratters. I was put in the House of Life, where the sacred papyri are kept, and the neophytes are taught about Egypt's history and religion. I enjoyed eavesdropping on the lectures when I wasn't sleeping or exploring the temple kitchens. Inevitably, it was discovered that the rat population in the House of Life was not only thriving, but feeding on the precious papyri. Such foul language, and from priests yet. I made a hasty retreat before the House of Life became the House of Death. Not that I would have stayed much longer in a place infested with rats. If only I could get inside one of the tombs. A pharaoh's burial chamber has food and water to sustain him in the afterlife, and his soul recites prayers to replenish it. I'd be saved if it weren't for those damned doors. I cursed the sacred peak for leading me into this valley, but, imagining my slow, agonizing death from lack of food and water, I switched to praying and entreat Bastet, the cat goddess, to help me find some. It's comforting to lick my private parts when faced with adversity. I find myself a shady spot, and I've just gotten a hind leg behind my head and applied the first lick when I hear a voice. A man's angry voice. Another brute? I prick up my ears and make out one word clearly. Imbeciles! I crawl over to a boulder, hide behind it, then carefully take a peek. Coming down a path is an angry-looking man carrying a baton and a shield, and leading 3 other men armed with batons and short fork sticks. Cemetery police? The men stop in front of a portal, where the leader inspects the seals on the doors. Satisfied they're unbroken, he turns to his men. How many times must I repeat it? No one is to report that a tomb was robbed last night. Don't you remember? Whenever a hidden tomb is robbed, the patrol who reports it is immediately suspected of having told the thieves its location. We would be questioned for hours, maybe even beaten. I didn't know there were also hidden tombs in Task-e-Qamāt. I must have been asleep or in one of the kitchens during that part of the lecture. But, Captain, one of the men asks, won't another patrol discover the robbery? The captain spits on the ground, barely missing the man's feet. Imbecile! It will never be discovered. As you saw yourself, the thieves replaced the rocks and shale they had removed from the entrance. If they hadn't dropped the amulets in their haste to escape before we arrived this morning, we wouldn't have known the tomb had been robbed. But we've picked all the amulets up. Grinning with satisfaction, he pats the swollen pouch hanging from his neck. So now there is no sign of the robbery. He spits on the ground again. Do all of you understand, bunch of imbeciles? Yes, Captain, the men answer in unison. The captain moves on and his men follow him. When he looks over his shoulder and sees they're moving slowly, he shakes his head and utters one word. I can't make it out, but can guess what it is. Bastet may have answered my prayer. It shouldn't be hard to find the entrance to the robbed tomb. The rocks and shale will smell of the robber's sweat. If I'm lucky, they just didn't drop amulets in their haste to escape, but also did a poor job of sealing the opening they had made to crawl through. As soon as the patrol is out of sight, I make my way up the path it had come down and soon detect the odor of human sweat. The rock and shale are piled against the cliff wall, completely hiding the tomb entrance, just as the captain said. But, being so close to the ground, I see at the bottom of the pile a small portion of shale that isn't covered with sand. When I claw at the shale, I realize it's loose and the pieces are small. Hopeful, I start to dig. I soon lose all track of time as I keep on burrowing. Whenever I'm tempted to give up, I think of the food and water I'll find in the pharaoh's burial chamber. Finally, I claw away the last bits of shale, crawl through the small opening, and find myself in a large chamber. I follow the trail of burning oil lamps the tomb robbers placed on the ground to light their way to the burial chamber. I cross the chamber to a descending stairway when, suddenly, there's a loud crash behind me. I turn to see that the pile of rock and shale filling the tomb entrance has collapsed, leaving it exposed, daylight now flooding in. Quickly, I descend the stairs to a sloping corridor. It ends at a shorter stairway leading to a second corridor with hieroglyphs and paintings of gods on the walls and ceiling. Above me are the protectors of Egypt, the sacred vulture, her wings spanning the width of the ceiling, and the sacred cobra, her hood flaring, poised to strike. Protectors or not, I don't like vultures, and cobras even less. To make it worse, they reappear down the length of the corridor. As I walk on, the gods and goddesses on the walls seem to be following me with their eyes. Beside each one are hieroglyphs. If I could read, they would identify the deity for me. But I recognize the ibis-headed man as the great magician god Tot, the inventor of hieroglyphs. Someone is moving beside me. My fur stands on end and my heart skips a beat. For the love of Bastet, it's only my shadow. I quicken my pace, then step into nothingness. I manage to hook my front claws on a solid surface. I hold on for dear life and promise the cow goddess spread across the ceiling over the shaft, her belly full of stars, that if she gives me the strength to save myself, I'll never steal food from a man again. At least, not while he's alive. I manage to pull myself up. The solid surface I dug my claws into turns out to be a narrow plank of wood the tomb robbers placed over the shaft as a bridge. I walk over it into another chamber. The walls, the ceiling, and the two enormous pillars are covered with more gods and hieroglyphics. On the far wall is a man with a falcon head, crowned by the sun disk. It's Ra, the sun god. I climb over the debris in front of the large opening the tomb robbers made in the wall. I walk through it and find a steep descending stairway. As I go down the stairs, I step on something soft, a small bundle wrapped with strips of linen. It smells sweet and spicy. Food? My claws quickly unravel the linen strips, and I examine my prize. For the love of Bastet, mummified intestines! As I go further down the stairs, I come across 3 more bundles and give them a wide berth. The pharaoh's mummified head is lying on the last few steps. The rest of his mummy is scattered on the floor near the sarcophagus. Not content with taking the jewelry that adorned the mummy, the tomb robbers hacked it up to get to the amulets placed in the linen wraps. Most of the bandages around the head have become undone, revealing a sunken mouth and 2 rows of brown teeth and worse, 2 glass eyes. One is still in the eye socket where the embalmer put it, and the other, caught between the linen wraps, is resting on the mummy's cheek and staring at me. I be pissed myself. The stream of urine hits a stone, and the ricochet almost puts out an oil lamp. I watch the trickle run past the bottom half of the mummy to a gilded wooden chest with the lid torn off. Even though they're badly damaged, I recognize the 4 carved female figures, each hugging a corner of the chest. The goddess Eshet, Nebhat, Neet, and Selket. The protectors of the dead. Protectors of the dead, my rump. They couldn't even protect their own effigies. I explore further and prick my paw. I give it a soothing lick and look at what I've stepped on. A gold cat amulet. I pick it up with my teeth and put it in my mouth. What if I were to take the amulet to the temple of Bastet in Bast? I close my eyes and imagine my journey through the desert where I'm faced with all sorts of dangers. I imagine arriving at the temple gate, exhausted, perhaps close to death, and letting the amulet drop from my tired mouth to the feet of the priests. "Look at that poor creature," I can almost hear them say. "The gods only know what he has been through to bring us this gift." I can almost taste the delicacies that the temple cooks, under orders from the priests, will prepare for me. I can almost feel the softness of the feather pillows put under my rump by a pretty maiden to soothe my aching body. My daydreams of pleasure are ended by a hard kick in the ass. I'm sent flying, and I land inside the sarcophagus, my head between my hind legs. The protectors of the dead are finally on the job. But there's nothing remotely divine or feminine about the angry bald man who's looking down at me and shaking a staff. I spit the cat amulet at him, hitting him on the forehead. "You accursed cat!" he shouts. "I'll have your life!" He bends over the sarcophagus, grabs me by the scruff of the neck, and pulls me out. He's wearing a long white skirt that reaches to his underarms and is held up by 2 thin shoulder straps. So much exposed skin. I unsheathe my claws and try to scratch him. He's so preoccupied with keeping me at arm's length he doesn't see another man approaching. He's also bald and dressed in white. His semi-transparent robe covers a skirt falling from his waist to his knees. He wears a thick necklace made of strings of colored beads. Hanging from it is a gold medallion bearing the sacred insignia worn by the high priest of Amun-Ra. He's frowning, but the look in his eyes is benevolent. "Kakamut!" the high priest says as he reaches his side. Kakamut is so startled he drops me. "Damn beast!" he hisses. I take cover behind the sarcophagus, sticking my head out to keep track of his movements. I find him staring at me. "Kakamut!" Reluctantly, Kakamut turns his head to the high priest, watching me out of the corner of his eye. "I saw you leaving us," the high priest says. "You looked upset, so I followed you. While you and the pharaoh were busy discussing the progress being made on his tomb," Kakamut explains. "One of the cemetery guards informed me that his patrol had discovered this tomb was broken into. His captain had told him not to report it." So one of the imbeciles ratted after all. I shiver to think what Kakamut will do to the captain. "I came in to investigate, and that's when—" He starts coughing, like someone choking on his own saliva. The high priest gives him a slap on the back. Unfortunately, it works. "That's when that creature assaulted me. For this affront against me, the vizier," he says, shaking his fist in the air, "I wanted killed." I'm not an it. I'm a he, and if prudence didn't dictate that I stay put behind the sarcophagus, I'd show him the proof. "Kakamut," the high priest interjects. "Perhaps it was an accident. Let us give the poor beast the benefit of the doubt." To my astonishment, I find myself suddenly getting up on my hind legs and walking erect out into the open. I go over to the vizier and hear myself say, "You kicked me! You threatened me with your staff! I fought back!" "You walk and talk like a human being," he says, incredulous. "I am speechless." "Speechless? I know how you feel. Till a moment ago, I couldn't talk." "You insolent freak! Quiet! I thought you were speechless." A burst of laughter resonates in the chamber. A tall young man descends the stairs. He's bare-chested, his short skirt held to his waist by a golden sash. He wears a headdress of striped cloth encircled by a gold band with a gold vulture head and a flaring gold cobra jutting from the front. He's still laughing as he approaches the sarcophagus. "For the love of all the gods," exclaims the high priest, You are laughing. You have not laughed since—" "Well, my dear Gato Haman, I have never encountered a cat like him before," says the newcomer, who now stands in front of me. I'm about to ask him his name when the vizier yells,
Insolent cat! Kneel in the presence of Pharaoh Motba.
Kneel? For the first time in my life, I'm upright, and you want me to go back down on the ground?
Kneel,
he commands again. When he sees I'm not moving, he steps behind me. Using his long staff, he pushes my head down onto the ground, and my eyes meet the Pharaoh's feet. What big feet you have, Pharaoh, I say, just before the staff strikes my head.